The howling wind carried her desperate cries into nothingness as Victoria Zimmerman crawled through the snow, fingers bloody and raw against the frozen ground. 3 days since the stagecoach robbery had left her abandoned in the wilderness outside Redding, California, and death seemed an inevitable conclusion to her journey westward. The year was 1879, and Victoria had traveled from Boston with dreams of becoming a schoolteacher in the promising frontier town. Her savings, tucked carefully into the hidden pocket of her coat, remained untouched by the bandits who had taken the other passengers' valuables before leaving them all to fend for themselves. The others had perished in the night, but Victoria had pressed on, determined to survive. Now, she could no longer feel her hands or feet. Her vision blurred as snowflakes melted against her eyelashes. The frostbite had set in hours ago, turning her once delicate fingers an angry, mottled red. She had read about frostbite in books, but nothing had prepared her for the excruciating pain that eventually gave way to a numbness more terrifying than the pain itself. "Please," she whispered, her cracked lips barely moving as she collapsed face first into the snow. "Please, God." The sound of hoofbeats seemed like a hallucination, a merciful fantasy before death claimed her. Victoria didn't lift her head, certain her mind was playing cruel tricks. It wasn't until strong hands turned her over that she realized salvation had come in human form. Miss, can you hear me?" The voice was deep, tinged with concern. Victoria forced her eyes open to see a man's face hovering above hers. A black Stetson hat shielded his features, but she could make out a strong jawline covered in stubble and eyes the color of the summer sky. "Help," she managed, her voice a broken whisper. The stranger cursed under his breath as his gaze fell to her hands. Without hesitation, he removed his gloves and took her frozen hands between his own. The warmth was almost painful, sending needles of sensation through her deadened skin. "I'll keep you safe," he promised, his voice steady and certain as he began rubbing her fingers gently. "You've got frostbite, but we caught it in time. I'm going to get you somewhere warm." Victoria tried to thank him, but consciousness slipped away as the stranger lifted her onto his horse. The last thing she felt was his solid chest against her back as darkness claimed her. When Victoria awoke, she was surrounded by warmth. A fire crackled nearby and heavy blankets were piled upon her. She lay on a bed in a small cabin, rustic but clean. For a moment, she wondered if she had died after all, but the pain in her hands and feet assured her she was very much alive. "You're awake." The deep voice came from across the room. Victoria turned her head to see the man from the snow. In the firelight, she could see him clearly for the first time. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was handsome, with a straight nose and full lips that contrasted with the hardness in his eyes. He looked to be in his early 30s, weathered by sun and wind, but undeniably attractive. "Where am I?" Victoria asked, her throat raw. "My cabin, about 15 miles outside of Redding." He approached with a cup of steaming liquid. "My name's Beau Patterson. I'm a rancher. Found you while I was checking fence lines before the storm got worse." "Victoria Zimmerman," she replied as he helped her sit up. "I was on the stagecoach to Redding. We were robbed and the others." "I know," Beau said grimly. "I found the stagecoach yesterday, too late for the others." He pressed the cup into her bandaged hands, helping her hold it. "Drink this. It's willow bark tea. It'll help with the pain." Victoria sipped the bitter liquid, wincing at both the taste and the sensation in her hands. "How bad is it?" she asked, afraid to look at her own fingers. "Not as bad as it could have been," Beau replied honestly. "You might lose sensation in the tips of your fingers and toes, but I don't think you'll lose any digits. We got to them in time." "My neighbor, Martha Thompson. She's got more experience with frostbite than I do. She helped get you warmed up properly, changed you into dry clothes." He nodded toward a chair where a woman's nightgown was draped. "The old clothes were soaked through. Would have killed you." Victoria's cheeks heated with embarrassment at the thought of strangers undressing her, but gratitude outweighed her modesty. "Thank you for saving my life." Beau shook his head. "No need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone," Victoria murmured. Thinking of the bandits who had left her to die, Beau's expression darkened. "Can you describe the men who robbed the stagecoach?" Victoria closed her eyes, trying to remember. "3 men. One had a scar across his cheek. Another was missing teeth. The leader wore a red kerchief around his neck." Beau nodded grimly. "The Hatcher gang. They've been terrorizing stagecoaches between here and Sacramento for months. You know them?" "I know of them. Sheriff's been after them since last spring." Beau took the empty cup from her hands. "You should rest. Your body's been through a lot." "Where will you sleep?" Victoria asked, suddenly aware she was occupying what must be his only bed. "Don't worry about me," he said, moving toward a chair by the fire. "I've slept in worse places than my own cabin floor." Victoria wanted to protest, but exhaustion overwhelmed her. As she drifted back to sleep, she found herself thinking that Beau Patterson was unlike any man she had ever met in Boston society. The next 3 days passed in a blur of pain and healing. Victoria drifted in and out of consciousness as fever took hold, her body fighting the trauma of exposure. Whenever she woke, Beau was there, pressing cool cloths to her forehead or helping her drink broth and willow bark tea. On the 4th day, Victoria awoke feeling stronger. The cabin was empty, but the fire still burned brightly. She pushed herself to a sitting position, wincing at the pain in her hands and feet. Looking down, she saw that her fingers were still wrapped in clean bandages. Cautiously, she pulled back the blankets and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet were also bandaged, but she needed to test them. Taking a deep breath, Victoria stood and immediately collapsed with a cry as pain shot through her frost-damaged feet. The door burst open and Beau rushed in, his face etched with concern. "What are you doing?" he demanded, crossing the room in 3 long strides. "I needed to," Victoria began, embarrassed by her weakness. "You needed to stay in bed," Beau interrupted, scooping her up effortlessly and placing her back on the bed. His hands were gentle despite the stern set of his jaw. "Your feet aren't ready to bear weight yet." "I cannot impose on you indefinitely," Victoria argued. "I need to get to Reading." "I was to be the new schoolteacher. They'll be expecting me." Beau's expression softened. "I sent word to town about what happened. The school board knows you're safe but injured. They're holding the position for you." Victoria blinked in surprise. "You did that for me." "Seemed the right thing to do." Beau turned away, busying himself with stoking the fire. "Martha will be by later to check your bandages. I need to tend to the cattle." Before Victoria could thank him again, he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She was a practical woman, she had to be, leaving Boston behind to forge a new life in California, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest whenever Beau was near. It was foolish, she knew, to develop feelings for a man who was simply doing a Christian duty in helping her. Yet there was something about his quiet strength and unwavering care that touched her deeply. That evening, Martha Thompson arrived as promised. She was a sturdy woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands. "Let's have a look at you, dear," Martha said, unwrapping Victoria's bandages with practiced movements. Victoria held her breath as her hands were revealed. The skin was still red and peeling in places, but not as swollen as she had feared. "You're healing nicely," Martha pronounced. "Beau did well, getting to you when he did." "He saved my life," Victoria said softly. Martha gave her a knowing look. Beau's a good man. Lost his wife and daughter to scarlet fever 5 years back. Hasn't been the same since. Victoria felt a pang of sadness for the man who had shown her such kindness. I had no idea. He doesn't talk about it, Martha said, applying a salve to Victoria's hands. But I think having someone to care for again has been good for him. He's been alone too long. As the older woman rewrapped her hands, Victoria considered her words. Was that why Beau had been so attentive? Did she simply represent a temporary chance to reclaim his role as protector? There now, Martha said, finishing with the bandages. Another week and you should be able to start walking a little. Until then, you're Beau's responsibility. She winked. Though from the way he fusses over you, I don't think he minds. After Martha left, Victoria tried to read a book from Beau's modest shelf, but her bandaged hands made turning pages difficult. She was struggling when Beau returned, his coat dusted with snow. "Storm's getting worse," he announced, stamping his boots by the door. His eyes fell on the book in her lap. "Would you like me to read to you?" The offer surprised her. "I wouldn't want to trouble you. No trouble." Beau hung his coat and hat, then pulled a chair beside the bed. "Which book, Walden?" Victoria replied. "I've always wanted to read it." Beau settled into the chair and opened the book. His deep voice filled the cabin as he read Thoreau's words about simplicity and self-reliance. Victoria was captivated, not just by the prose but by the reader. Beau's voice changed as he read, becoming smoother and more expressive than his usual taciturn speech. They continued this way for several evenings, Beau reading while Victoria listened. Sometimes they paused to discuss the ideas presented, and Victoria discovered that, beneath his rugged exterior, Beau was thoughtful and well-read. "How did you come to ranch in California?" Victoria asked one evening after he closed the book. Beau was quiet for a moment. "Came west after the war. Fought for the Union. Didn't have much to go back to in Pennsylvania afterward." He stared into the fire. "Worked cattle drives for years before saving enough to buy my own place." "And your wife?" Victoria asked hesitantly, remembering what Martha had told her. Beau's face closed off. "Martha talks too much," he said, not unkindly. "Elizabeth and I met in Sacramento, married in '72, had our daughter Sarah a year later." His voice grew rough. "Lost them both in '74, scarlet fever." "I'm so sorry," Victoria whispered. "Life goes on," Beau said, standing abruptly. "You should rest." The next morning, Victoria awoke to find a wooden crutch leaning against the wall beside the bed and Beau watching her expectantly. "Made it last night," he explained. "Thought you might like to move around a bit. Your hands are healing well enough to grip it." Tears sprang to Victoria's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. With Beau's assistance, she managed to stand, leaning heavily on the crutch. The pain in her feet was still intense, but bearable with the crutch taking most of her weight. "Thank you," she said, taking a tentative step. "I was beginning to feel quite useless." "You're healing," Beau corrected her. "That's your only job right now." Over the next few days, Victoria grew stronger, making her way around the cabin with increasing confidence. She insisted on helping with small tasks, folding laundry, peeling potatoes, anything she could manage with her healing hands. Beau protested at first, but eventually seemed to appreciate her contributions to their shared living space. "Why did you decide to become a teacher?" Beau asked one evening as they shared a simple dinner of rabbit stew. Victoria smiled at the memory of her decision. "My father was a professor at Harvard. He believed in education for women just as much as for men, which was rather progressive for his time. When he died 2 years ago, I knew I couldn't stay in Boston. My mother had passed years before, and the memories were too painful." She stirred her stew thoughtfully. I saw an advertisement seeking teachers for Western towns. The idea of helping build a community through education appealed to me. Reading's growing fast, Beau acknowledged. Lots of families moving in. They need good teachers. And what about you? Victoria asked. Do you ever get lonely out here by yourself? The question hung in the air between them. For a moment, Victoria thought he wouldn't answer. Sometimes, Beau finally admitted. But I've got my cattle, my land. It's enough. Victoria wasn't convinced but didn't press further. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the wind howl outside, she wondered what it would be like to stay here, in this cabin with this quiet, complicated man. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. 2 weeks after Beau had found her in the snow, Victoria was able to walk short distances without the crutch. Her hands had healed remarkably well, with only the very tips of her fingers remaining slightly numb, a permanent reminder of how close she had come to death. I should be able to travel to Reading soon, she said one morning, as Beau prepared to go out to check his cattle. Something flickered across his face: disappointment, relief. Victoria couldn't be sure. When you're ready, he said noncommittally. No rush. But there was a rush, Victoria knew. The school term would be starting soon, and she needed to establish herself in town, find lodging, prepare lessons. Yet the thought of leaving the cabin, of leaving Beau, filled her with an unexpected sadness. That afternoon, Victoria was alone in the cabin when the sound of approaching horses caught her attention. Peering out the window, she saw 3 riders approaching. Something about their silhouettes sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with her recovering frostbite. Victoria's heart pounded as recognition dawned. The man in front wore a red kerchief around his neck. These were the bandits who had robbed the stagecoach and left her to die. Moving as quickly as her healing feet would allow, Victoria searched the cabin for a weapon. She found Beau's shotgun mounted above the door, but had never fired a gun in her life. Still, she took it down with trembling hands. The door burst open before she could decide what to do. The leader of the Hatcher gang stood in the doorway, snow swirling around him. Well, he drawled, eyes widening at the sight of her. Looks like one of our passengers survived after all. Victoria raised the shotgun, but her injured hands betrayed her. The bandit easily wrenched it from her grasp. Now that ain't hospitable, he said with a cruel smile. We just came to visit our neighbor Patterson. Didn't expect to find a lady here. His eyes traveled over her in a way that made Victoria's skin crawl. Mr. Patterson will be back any moment, Victoria said, trying to keep her voice steady. Oh, I doubt that, the bandit replied. Saw him riding south toward his back pasture. He won't be back for hours. He glanced at his companions. Search the place. Patterson's been doing well with his cattle. He's bound to have cache somewhere. As the other 2 men ransacked the cabin, the leader kept his eyes on Victoria. You're the school teacher, ain't you? The one from the stagecoach. Mighty lucky Patterson found you before you froze solid. What do you want? Victoria demanded, backing away. Well, now that's a loaded question, he said, advancing toward her. Money primarily, but seeing as you're here all alone, maybe I'll take something else too. Victoria's back hit the wall as panic surged through her. Just as the bandit reached for her, a shot rang out. The window shattered and the man fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder. Get away from her, Beau's voice commanded from outside. The other 2 bandits drew their guns, but Beau was faster. 2 more shots and both men were disarmed, clutching injured hands. Beau entered the cabin, rifle trained on the wounded leader. Hatcher, he spat. Thought I recognized your horses. Should have killed you the first time our paths crossed. Patterson, the bandit groaned. This ain't over. It is for you, Beau replied coldly. He glanced at Victoria. Are you hurt? She shook her head, still trembling. With efficient movements, Beau bound the 3 men with rope. "I'm taking these 3 to the sheriff in Reading," he told Victoria. "Will you be all right alone for a few hours?" Victoria straightened her shoulders. "I'll be fine, but please, be careful." Beau's expression softened for a moment. "Lock the door behind me. I'll be back before dark." After Beau left with the prisoners, Victoria cleaned up the mess the bandits had made. Her hands ached from the exertion, but she welcomed the distraction. The encounter had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. It was nearly dark when Beau returned, looking exhausted but satisfied. "Sheriff's got them locked up," he reported. "They won't be terrorizing anyone else for a long time." "Thank you," Victoria said, relief washing over her. "If you hadn't come when you did—" "But I did," Beau interrupted. He hesitated, then added, "I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you." The admission hung in the air between them. Victoria's heart raced as Beau stepped closer. "When I found you in the snow that day," he said quietly, "something changed for me. I thought my heart had died with Elizabeth and Sarah. But then there you were, fighting to survive despite everything, and I felt alive again." Victoria reached out, placing her healing hand against his cheek. "I owe you my life." "You don't owe me anything," Beau insisted. "But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't dreading the day you leave for Reading." "What if?" Victoria began, barely daring to voice the thought that had been growing in her mind. "What if I stayed, at least a little longer?" Beau's eyes searched hers. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "Everything has happened so quickly. I came west to teach, to build a new life. But being here with you, it feels right in a way I never expected." Beau took her hands gently in his. "The school in Reading will still need a teacher, but maybe you could ride in from here. It's not so far." "Are you asking me to stay?" "I'm asking you to consider it," Beau said carefully. "I know we've only known each other a short time, but I haven't felt this way since he couldn't finish." But Victoria understood. She stood on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then grew deeper as Beau pulled her closer. When they finally parted, both breathless, Victoria saw something in Beau's eyes she hadn't seen before: hope. "We should talk to the school board," Victoria said practically, though her pulse was racing. "See if they would accept a teacher who commutes from outside town." Beau smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "We'll ride into town tomorrow, together." The journey to Reading the next day was Victoria's first real test of her recovered strength. Beau had insisted she ride his gentlest mare while he walked alongside, unwilling to risk her health by having her walk the distance. Reading had grown significantly since its establishment as a railroad town. The streets bustled with activity: miners, farmers, merchants, and families going about their business. Victoria felt a flutter of nervousness as they approached the schoolhouse, a modest but well-built structure near the center of town. The school board chairman, Mr. Wilkins, was surprised but pleased to see her. "Miss Zimmerman, we'd heard of your ordeal. It's a miracle you survived." "The miracle was Mr. Patterson finding me when he did," Victoria replied, nodding toward Beau, who stood respectfully at the edge of the room. After explaining her situation and her request to continue living at Beau's ranch while teaching in town, Victoria waited anxiously for the board's response. Mr. Wilkins exchanged glances with the other board members. "It's unusual," he admitted. "But given the circumstances and our need for a qualified teacher, I believe we can accommodate this arrangement, on one condition." "And what is that?" Victoria asked, tensing. "Propriety must be maintained," Mr. Wilkins said firmly. "The town's children cannot be taught by a woman living unchaperoned with a man to whom she is not married. It would set an inappropriate example." Victoria's cheeks flushed. She hadn't considered how their living arrangement might appear to others. Beau stepped forward. I understand your concerns, Mr. Wilkins. They're well-founded. He glanced at Victoria, something unreadable in his eyes. Would you excuse us for a moment? Outside the schoolhouse, Beau led Victoria to a quiet spot beneath a maple tree. I didn't think about the scandal it might cause, Victoria said, distressed. Perhaps I should find lodging in town after all. There's another solution, Beau said, his voice rough with emotion. One I've been considering since last night. Victoria's breath caught as Beau took her hands in his. I know this is sudden, he continued, and I would understand if you need time. But Victoria, when I found you in that snow, I made a promise to keep you safe. I didn't expect that promise would lead to falling in love with you. Victoria's eyes widened. Love, yes, Beau said simply. I love you, Victoria, your courage, your intelligence, your kindness. I know we haven't known each other long, but out here in the West, life moves differently. Sometimes you have to trust your heart. Are you asking? Beau nodded, dropping to one knee despite the curious onlookers who had begun to notice them. Victoria Zimmerman, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not just for propriety's sake, but because I believe we could build a good life together. Tears filled Victoria's eyes as emotions overwhelmed her. She had come west seeking a new beginning, never imagining she would find love in such unexpected circumstances. Looking into Beau's earnest face, she knew her answer. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Beau Patterson. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in Reading's small church. Martha Thompson had helped Victoria sew a simple but elegant wedding dress, and the townspeople, curious about the schoolteacher who had survived frostbite and won the heart of the taciturn rancher, filled the pews. As Victoria spoke her vows, she marveled at how her life had changed in just over a month. From near death in the snow to becoming a wife and teacher, her journey had taken turns she never could have anticipated. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful. The town's women had prepared a feast, and someone produced a fiddle, leading to dancing in the church hall. Victoria was introduced to countless neighbors and townspeople, all welcoming her warmly to the community. Are you happy? Beau asked quietly as they shared a moment alone amid the festivities. Victoria squeezed his hand. Happier than I ever thought possible. I worried, he admitted, that you might be agreeing to marry me out of gratitude or necessity. Beau Patterson, Victoria said firmly. I may have many reasons for loving you, but gratitude is the least of them. I love you for who you are, a good, honorable man with a gentle heart behind that stern exterior. His smile was worth every hardship she had endured to find him. That night, as they returned to the cabin, now their home together, Victoria felt a new kind of nervousness. As a proper Boston lady, she had been raised with certain expectations about marriage and what it entailed. But the tenderness in Beau's eyes as he carried her across the threshold eased her fears. We have all the time in the world, he assured her, seeming to read her thoughts. Nothing has to happen tonight that you're not ready for. But Victoria discovered she was ready to fully embrace this new life and the love they had found in each other. Their first night as husband and wife was gentle and passionate, a culmination of the bond that had been growing since that fateful day in the snow. The weeks turned into months as Victoria settled into her dual roles as teacher and rancher's wife. Each morning, Beau would drive her to town in their wagon, and each afternoon he would return to collect her. The arrangement worked better than either had anticipated, with Victoria finding fulfillment in both her professional and personal life. The school thrived under Victoria's guidance. Her Eastern education and progressive teaching methods won over even the most skeptical parents. She introduced new books, organized a small library, and started an adult literacy program for those who had never had the opportunity to learn to read. At the ranch, Victoria proved herself equally capable. Though she had never lived outside a city before, she took to rural life with determination. Beau taught her to ride properly, to tend a vegetable garden, and even to shoot, a skill she had wished for during the bandits' intrusion. "You're a natural," Beau said proudly as Victoria hit 3 out of 5 targets during a shooting lesson. "I hope I never need to use this skill again," Victoria replied, thinking of the Hatcher gang. The bandits had been sentenced to prison in Sacramento, but the memory of their threat still haunted her occasionally. "So do I," Beau agreed, kissing her forehead. "But knowing you can protect yourself gives me peace of mind when I'm working far out on the range." As summer turned to fall, Victoria received a letter that changed everything again. Her father's attorney in Boston wrote that a distant cousin had passed away, leaving Victoria a substantial inheritance. The money would be hers upon signature of the enclosed documents. "This is incredible," Beau said when she showed him the letter. "You're a wealthy woman, Victoria." "We're wealthy," she corrected him. "What's mine is yours now." That evening they sat by the fire discussing what to do with the unexpected windfall. "We could expand the ranch," Beau suggested. "Buy more cattle, maybe hire a hand or two. And build a bigger house," Victoria added. "With a proper study where I can prepare lessons and grade papers." "Are you unhappy with our cabin?" Beau asked, looking concerned. Victoria smiled, taking his hand. "I love our cabin. It's where you saved my life, where we fell in love, but—" She placed his hand on her abdomen. "We might need more space soon." Beau stared at her, comprehension dawning slowly. "Are you saying—" Victoria nodded, tears of joy filling her eyes. "I'm with child, Beau. Dr. Harris confirmed it yesterday." With a cry of joy, Beau swept her into his arms, spinning her around the small cabin. "A baby," he whispered, setting her down gently. "Our baby." For a moment, Victoria saw grief flash across his face, remembrance of the daughter he had lost. She cupped his cheek. "She'll always be part of you," she said softly. "Sarah will always be your firstborn." Beau nodded, emotion making speech impossible. When he finally found his voice, he said, "This child will be so loved, Victoria, so very loved." The new house was completed just in time for winter, a sprawling ranch house with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and Victoria's study. Beau had insisted on hiring the best carpenter in the county, wanting everything perfect for Victoria and their coming child. As the snow began to fall outside, Victoria sat by the fire in their new home, hands resting on her growing belly. Beau entered, stomping snow from his boots. "Storm's picking up," he announced, hanging his coat. "Reminds me of the day we met." Victoria smiled at the memory that once would have been only traumatic but now held a strange sweetness. "You saved me that day." Beau came to sit beside her, placing his hand over hers on her belly. "And you saved me right back," he said softly. "I was existing, not living, before you came into my life." Their child kicked beneath their joined hands as if affirming their bond. Victoria leaned against Beau's solid warmth, thinking of how far they had come. "I never told you," Beau said suddenly, "but when I found you in that snow, I almost rode past." "What?" Victoria looked up in surprise. Beau nodded, eyes distant with memory. "I was hurrying to get home before the worst of the storm hit. Saw something in the snow, but thought it was just a fallen branch or animal. Something made me look closer." He met her gaze. "Maybe it was fate. Or maybe you're simply a good man who couldn't ignore someone in need," Victoria suggested. "Either way," Beau said, kissing her softly, "finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." Spring brought new life to the Patterson ranch. The cattle gave birth to calves. Victoria's garden sprouted with tender green shoots, and on a clear April morning their son was born. Benjamin Thomas Patterson, Victoria whispered, cradling the infant in her arms. They had decided to name him after both their fathers. Beau sat on the edge of the bed, awestruck by the tiny person they had created. "He has your eyes," he observed, gently touching the baby's cheek. "And your chin," Victoria replied with a tired smile. The birth had been long and difficult, but Dr. Harris had seen them through it. As Beau took his son in his arms for the first time, Victoria saw the healing in his expression. The grief for his lost family would never completely disappear, but now joy had found its place alongside it. Life settled into a new rhythm with Benjamin's arrival. Victoria took a temporary leave from teaching, focusing on motherhood while planning to return in the fall. The inheritance had allowed them to hire 2 ranch hands, giving Beau more time with his family. On warm evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset over their land while Benjamin slept in Victoria's arms. These moments of quiet contentment were precious to both of them. "Do you ever regret it?" Beau asked one such evening. "Coming west, enduring everything you did." Victoria considered the question seriously. "I regret the suffering of the other passengers who didn't survive the robbery. I regret the pain of frostbite." She shifted Benjamin in her arms, looking at their home and land. "But I cannot regret the path that led me here to you and Benjamin. Even the worst experiences brought me to where I was meant to be." As Benjamin grew from infant to toddler, the Patterson ranch thrived. Victoria returned to teaching, now bringing Benjamin with her each day. The schoolchildren adored their teacher's son, and Benjamin soaked up the attention like a sponge, showing an early love for books that delighted his mother. Beau expanded their cattle operation, gaining a reputation for quality stock throughout Northern California. The ranch hands they had hired, brothers named Jacob and Michael Turner, proved invaluable, becoming almost like family. In the spring following Benjamin's 2nd birthday, Victoria made another joyful announcement: they were expecting their 2nd child. "I hope it's a girl this time," Beau said, embracing her. "A little lady with her mother's spirit and intelligence." Victoria laughed. "As long as the baby is healthy, I'll be content. Though I admit, a daughter would be wonderful." Their daughter, Elizabeth Martha Patterson, was born the following November, named for Beau's first wife and their dear friend Martha Thompson, who had passed away peacefully in her sleep just months before. Little Elizabeth Ellie, as they called her, was the image of her father, with dark hair and blue eyes. Benjamin, now 3, took his role as big brother seriously, constantly checking on his baby and bringing her toys she was still too young to play with. "Have I told you lately how much I love you?" Beau asked Victoria one night as they stood in the doorway of their children's bedroom, watching them sleep. "Every day," Victoria replied, leaning against him, "in words and actions both." "Sometimes I still wake up thinking it was all a dream," Beau admitted, "that I'll find myself alone again in that old cabin." "It's no dream," Victoria assured him, taking his hand and placing it over her heart. "I'm here, we're here, and we always will be." 5 years after Victoria had been left to die in the snow, the Patterson family celebrated Christmas in their warm, bustling home. Benjamin, now 5, was reading simple books on his own, making Victoria burst with pride. Ellie, at 2, was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. They had invited the schoolchildren and their families for a Christmas pageant, turning their ranch into a community gathering place. As Victoria watched Beau lift Ellie onto his shoulders to place the star atop their Christmas tree, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. The frostbite had left its mark on cold days, her fingers still ached, and the tips remained somewhat numb. But these small reminders of her ordeal only served to make her appreciate her blessings more deeply. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Victoria and Beau sat before the fire, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. "I received a letter from the governor today," Beau said casually. Victoria looked up in surprise. "The governor of California. What did he want?" "He's heard about our ranch, our work with the school. He's appointed me to a committee on frontier development." Beau seemed almost embarrassed by the honor. It would mean traveling to Sacramento occasionally. "That's wonderful, Beau," Victoria exclaimed. "Your experience would be invaluable to such a committee." "There's more," Beau continued. "He mentioned that the state is establishing a normal school for teacher training in Sacramento. They're looking for experienced educators to help develop the curriculum." Victoria's eyes widened. "And he suggested me," Beau nodded. "He's heard about your adult literacy program and the improvements you've made to Reading School. Said someone with both Eastern education and Western experience would be perfect. But the children, the ranch." Victoria began, mind racing. "We'd make it work," Beau assured her. "The appointments would only require occasional travel. We could go together sometimes, make it an adventure." Victoria considered the opportunity. 10 years ago, as a young woman in Boston, she could never have imagined such a path for herself: teacher, rancher's wife, mother, and now potentially an educational advisor to the state. "What do you think?" Beau asked, watching her closely. "I think," Victoria said slowly, "that life has a way of offering possibilities beyond our wildest dreams." "Is that a yes?" Victoria smiled, taking his hand. "It's a yes, another adventure for us to share." Beau kissed her, and Victoria melted into his embrace just as she had countless times before. The passion between them had never dimmed, growing deeper with each passing year. "You remember what you said to me that day in the snow?" Victoria asked as they parted. "I'll keep you safe," Beau replied without hesitation. Victoria nodded. "You have in every way possible, not just from the cold or danger, but from loneliness, from a life half lived." She touched his face, tracing the lines that years of sun and smiling had etched there. "You've given me a home, a family, a purpose." "We gave those things to each other," Beau corrected gently. "And that's what makes our story special, Victoria. It wasn't just that I saved you or you saved me. We saved each other." As the snow fell softly outside, blanketing their land in pristine white, Victoria and Beau Patterson held each other close, grateful for the storm that had once threatened to take everything, but instead had given them more than they ever dreamed possible. In the years that followed, the Patterson family continued to grow and thrive. Benjamin followed in his mother's footsteps, eventually becoming a teacher himself after studying at the university in San Francisco. Ellie, with her father's affinity for the land and animals, took a more active role in the ranch operations as she grew older. Victoria and Beau balanced their responsibilities to family, ranch, and community with their state appointments, gaining respect throughout California for their contributions to education and frontier development. Their partnership, forged in the most desperate circumstances, became a model for many young couples in the region. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. As Victoria stood beside Beau, watching their family, a family that had begun with a chance encounter in a snowstorm, she felt a completeness that surpassed anything she could have imagined on that terrible day when she had been left in the snow to die. "Worth it," Beau whispered, squeezing her hand. Victoria smiled up at the man who had warmed her hands and her heart, who had kept his promise to keep her safe through all life's challenges. "Every moment," she replied. "Every single moment."